Hello there. You pushed the button, I guess, to download this video from the Coleman's Corner website or from YouTube. And here I am, John Coleman. Who am I? Well, I'm the weatherman on KUSI TV in San Diego, California. Most of you know that, but some of you who have followed a link to here or found me on YouTube don't know anything about me. I was the original weatherman on Good Morning America. That was back in the 1970s. I was the founder of the Weather Channel, the cable TV network. That was in the 1980s. And I've been interviewed on all the big shows all over the cable networks about global warming. I'm a scientist, a meteorologist who has spent over 60 years forecasting the weather every day. And I guess this represents my proudest moment in my career. In 1982, the American Meteorological Society, of which I was a professional member for many years, awarded me their certificate as the Broadcast Meteorologist of the Year. Later on, I got kind of disgusted with the political agenda of the American Meteorological Society and let my membership fade away. But I was very proud, certainly, to be named the Meteorologist of the Year among all the broadcast meteorologists in the nation at that time. Now, I want to make something perfectly clear here. This is a wonderful planet we live on. I love it just as much as you do. And I want to protect it from the damage that our civilization might do to it, same as you do. And we have been told that we are destroying this planet, and because of what we're doing to the climate. And I want you to know that if I ever thought that was true, that we were creating global warming or climate disruption through our burning of fossil fuels and creating carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, I would devote the rest of my life to protecting this planet. I mean, that's very important. This is our home. This is what we got. This is where we live. But I am also absolutely positive that this whole thing about carbon dioxide and global warming is bad science. It's science gone bad. Science been taken over by people with political and environmental agendas, and it's just gotten really way out of hand. So I speak out about it whenever I can. I appreciate you listening to me on this occasion. We are being used by all sorts of people for their agendas, and what they're basing it on isn't so. And they're also promoting alternate energy. And by the way, that's costing us billions of dollars in our electric bill and billions of dollars in what we pay for gasoline, that is entirely based upon this anti-fossil fuel campaign. So these people are trying to make it seem that I take sides politically. I'm not interested in politics. That I'm anti-environmentalism. My goodness, I love the planet. And I promote all I can of protecting our climate. And they also think I'm in the payroll of the oil and gas interest. Not at all. I don't get a nickel from them. That's not my point. Now look, they tell us that we have to turn off the lights on our civilization. And I love this advanced civilization. For thousands of years, the human species has improved itself and improved its civilization and created this wonderful environment. They want us to stop the exhaust from our cars, stop driving cars and trucks. They want us to stop flying on airplanes. They want to shut down the factories that make our smartphones. You want to give up your phone and our iPads and our television sets and our radios, and they want us to turn off the lights and I guess kind of go back to the civilization of Tarzan and Jane. Folks, that's real silly. It's totally unnecessary, and the whole thing is based on the concept that we are destroying the planet. Now, they are promoting both solar and wind power. Well, those are wonderful efforts to improve our way of generating electricity. But by the way, they cost us billions of dollars, and they're not very efficient. While they work pretty well where I live here in Southern California, worldwide they don't work well at all, and the power they generate costs about 10 times the power that we generate using fossil fuels. So it has really increased our cost of living. And then they tell us, oh, we're killing off the polar bears. That's not true. We're not killing the polar bears. There are actually more polar bears living on planet Earth today than at any time since we've been counting them. And they also tell us, of course, that we're melting the polar ice caps. Oh yeah? The Antarctic polar ice cap is at an all-time high. And the Arctic ice cap is increasing again after diminishing. They tell us, of course, that we're flooding the shorelines. Excuse me, do you live on the coast? How much has the water come up in your lifetime? They manufacture data to make it look like we're increasing the water level of the oceans, but we're not. And despite all their claims, the truth is we're not experiencing any incredibly bad weather. Now let me ask a question. What is the right climate for Earth? Which temperature range? What kind of weather do you want? Do you want lots of rain, or do you want a climate that's dry with very little rain? Do you want, well, you want what I want. Climate that's unaltered by the activities of our civilization, as close to natural as possible. And of course, we'd like that natural to be very nice and pleasant to live in, but you got to understand something. The natural climate has changed, and changed radically, up and down through all the history of mankind. From ice cores, we have determined, paleoclimatologists have determined, what the temperatures have been through the history. This goes back about 350,000 years. And we've alternated between ice ages and what we call interglacial periods, areas of warming. So there's an ice age, interglacial period, ice age, interglacial period. And these interglacial periods only last for about 20,000 years. Then we drop into an ice age for about 45, 50, 60,000 years. And here is our current interglacial period. We warmed up about 12,000 years ago. So which of these climates do you want? Do you want the ice age? You want the hot? What's your choice? Well, again, we just want it natural, not man-made. But you got to understand that even in the last 1,000 years or so, well, let's say the 12,000 since the last ice age ended, this is the end of the ice age here, temperatures have naturally gone up and down, up and down, up and down. Man didn't cause any of these changes. Our advanced civilization didn't begin on this chart till about here, and that last little rise, it's no different than these other rises above normal, but somehow we're being told that we are causing it, and it's going to be a huge, huge problem. So even if our climate is natural, not man-made, it can be highly varied from, of course, the really warm spell in which they were having, they put up grape arbors and made wine on Greenland, to the little ice age when it snowed in the winter. It snowed in the middle of summer up in New England, and crops failed around the world. So we have these natural variations in climate. Well, of course, we don't want any of those extremes. We want nice climate. Well, here's your natural climate. Here's your ups and downs in temperature. And you can see all these are all natural. Here we come up to the area in which we've been using fossil fuels and putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And you can see a rise there, no different than the rise here, or the rise here, or the rise here, or the rise here. But they try to tell us, why do they do that? They try to tell us that that is because of something we did. So all of these rises and falls are natural, and then they tell us that this last one is because we're bad boys and girls, and we're using fossil fuels and creating CO2. So here's a chart that starts back at about the time we started using fossil fuels, and it does show temperature increase along with the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the carbon dioxide being the red line here. It does show that, but let me show you something else that it shows. Back here, here's an area where the carbon dioxide, the red line, is coming up, but the temperature is actually falling, and that went on for about 30 years. And up here, starting right after World War II and running up till about 1980, a 40-year period, the carbon dioxide was rising as we industrialized our society and drove a lot of cars and trucks and airplanes. But look, temperatures held steady for that period of time. So there's one period where the carbon dioxide and the temperatures have no relationship. Here's another one where the carbon dioxide is not causing temperature rise. So why should we believe that there's a connection between the amount of carbon dioxide and the temperature in the atmosphere? So the two key points I make about this chart is that, oh, by the way, this is done in tenths of a degrees. Through all this time, the increase in temperature is about 1.5 degrees, a little less. The carbon dioxide has been steady, and it is, no question that we increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. But that connection between carbon dioxide and temperatures just has never been proved. And oh yes, let me show you a chart of temperatures since 1995 and spreading through the first part of the 21st century here. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Since 1998 up to this date, 2013, there's been absolutely no increase in temperature. Temperatures have been flat, no increase. And if you go back for this entire chart, less than 1 degree of warming since 1978. So you're going to tell me that we have a crisis of warming of the atmosphere? Come on. That's within the error of the thermometer, for Pete's sakes. Now, here's the measure of the carbon dioxide, and this is the good science that goes along with the bad science. There's no question the carbon dioxide is increasing in the atmosphere, and there's no question that a part of that increase, not all of it, but a part, is related to our burning of fossil fuels, our powering of our cars and trucks and airplanes, our generating of electric power for our civilization. By the way, that Keeling curve comes from these two gentlemen at the Scripps Oceanographic Institute in San Diego. The first being the father Keeling, David Keeling, and then his son Ralph, who picked up following him and created the observatory out on Hawaii that measures the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and creates what has been known as the Keeling curve. It also shows the seasonal ups and downs each year. But don't get just alarmed by this. Keep your eye on the ball. There's no link that I can find between this, the Keeling curve, and this, the temperatures, and I show you charts generated by 2 different organizations worldwide. You just can't find any dramatic increase in temperatures to go along with it. And if you look back in the past, there are periods that have been much warmer than they are now, and the increase is much greater than this increase that we've had since we've been burning fossil fuels. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm trying to make the point to you that we're getting some cooked science here that's supporting a global warming thing. Have you ever heard of the hockey stick chart? This Professor Michael Mann, he took all the data that he used data from tree rings and stuff like that. And he created this chart that just smoothed out, ignored the Ice Age, ignored the medieval warm period in the Little Ice Age, and flattened out the whole temperature display. It became known as the hockey stick chart. And it showed steady temperatures through all the years, then this rapid rise here at the end to dramatize the temperatures. And this chart was adopted by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The United Nations published in their first reports and used to alarm the public and create this chaotic fear about global warming. Well, it's turned out that this chart has absolutely no scientific validity. It turns out that you put any data you want into his formula and you come out with the same hockey stick chart. It was all manipulated. And that was your first hint that things were really not quite what they were told they ought to be. And here's some data that I think might blow your mind. This is about worldwide temperature records. Here in North America, the all-time temperature record for North America was in 1934. How about South America? 1920 all-time temperature record. How about Australia? 1960. How about Asia? 1977, or Europe rather, and Asia, 1942. So there are no recent temperature records around the world. The hottest weather in all these places was in no way related to our buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But you see, we have this carbon dioxide chart. Now I need to talk about that some, because there's a lot more to that than meets your eye here. And as you can see, the CO2 is not a significant greenhouse gas. Now I want to show you that. We're going to take a look at the atmosphere. Here it is. 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 1% argon, 1% water vapor. And what's this? 4/100ths of a percent carbon dioxide. Less than 1/2 of 1% carbon dioxide. This supposed horrid greenhouse gas that has been called a pollutant, that we're told is causing global warming. It's a tiny fraction of our atmosphere. even after all these years of burning fossil fuels. It's not very important. So how can that little fraction of 1% of the atmosphere create all this climate chaos? How does that happen? Well, the scientists behind it at the UN and in the camp with Al Gore call this radiative forcing. And they say that the carbon dioxide interacts with the water vapor, the primary greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, to create this runaway global warming in the atmosphere. And they've gotten all sorts of papers. They've run computer models, one after another, 15, 16, 17 of them, and published these studies. And by the way, they're getting billions of dollars per year of tax money to support their research. And they don't get the money if they don't support it. So you can see that it's a follow the money deal. And so they say radiative forcing is causing global warming, and that's that. And they publish charts like this showing the rapid rise in temperatures and the rise in greenhouse gases. And they talk about the melting of the Arctic, and they talk about the death of the polar bears, and that frightens you. They talk about how we're going to have flooding of the coast, and how we're going to have catastrophic superstorms, and how we're going to have these super hurricanes, and how droughts worse than ever will sweep the earth, and heat waves will kill millions of people. They talk, and all because of radiative forcing, the effect of less than 0.5% of the atmosphere interacting with water vapor to create this incredible warming. So what proof do they have of this theory? Well, here's the meeting of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They took a vote, and they said that's the way it is, it's settled science. I got news for you. Science isn't settled by a vote. And those people who made up this are not scientists for the most part. They're bureaucrats, they're environmentalists, they're government people. They are politicians and scientists who are receiving millions of dollars in grant money, who therefore want to back that global warming because, well, look, you're a scientist. You've gotten your PhD in climatology. You got married, you bought a house, you had kids. You got a mortgage, you got the cost of living. You want to have a successful career. You want to publish papers. You want to get to go to these big glamorous meetings all over the world. You want to be a big deal scientist. You got to go along. You got to do it. But I got to tell you that that vote is not proof. In science, in fact, that doesn't count at all. Now, the glaciers, I want to talk about them for a minute. They have been melting for 12,000 years, ever since the last ice age ended. And that is not exactly something that is man-made. Here's what Earth looked like 12,000 years ago at the end of the ice age. This huge ice cap covered most of the Earth, everything from about the 30th parallel up to the poles. And it was a snowball, Earth was. And much of that ice is melted, but there's still some of it in glaciers and up at the pole and down at the South Pole, up in the high elevations of the mountains. That's reasonable. And we're in this warming trend of an interglacial period, so it keeps melting somewhat. That's not a big deal. You can't make it a big deal. We are so lucky to be living in an interglacial period. My goodness, we're having great climate. We should be enjoying it and not getting panicky. This interglacial period is just absolutely beautiful. And yeah, we do. And Antarctic. The Antarctic, the ice cap is at its greatest. And in the Arctic, where we had a few years of very low ice level and there was a lot of clamor about it, we're now back up within the normal range. And the ice is melting and coming and going.